What are the next 34 banks to fail now that we're seeing this crazy week from hell where all these banks are collapsing around us? We have to be able to find a way to find out what next ones are going to get hurt. Today, we're going to be checking out a couple graphs here. I want to show you this one right here. Tighter credit conditions are coming. All banks to the right of SVP are likely to immediately start reorganizing their balance sheets. So I want you just to take a look at this list. Now, this is going to be showing you some Americans and some Canadian banks. But if you notice on the left here, JP Morgan is really safe. I'm actually quite surprised. Bank of America is extra safe here. You guys know that we're in Canada as well. TD Bank, Toronto Dominion Bank is here with 56, but we see where Silicon Valley Bank was right here where that arrow is. It is in a lot of trouble. We know that that bank collapsed, but you have to ask yourself, if they were the 63, how is it possible that these banks over here are not down yet? They're not down yet, but these are all the banks that are in worse shape that haven't crashed yet. That's a lot of banks. So what we're seeing right now is banks all over the place are losing their depositors as they're all rushing to Citibank, Bank of America, JP Morgan, all of the safest banks that you can get. So this is happening right now. And remember, if people are going to be running in and trying to leave one type of bank to run for the other one, it can cause a lot of problems. The run on the banks can cause those banks to actually collapse themselves, number one. But number two, we don't want to be left with four giant banks in a country and that's it. No more credit unions, nothing else. We also don't want that. So this could be a much bigger problem down the road. What we've seen, that Moody's is cutting their outlook on US banking system to negative, citing rapid deterioration operating environment. You guys, I have never in my entire career seen for even a moment where Moody's is downgrading an entire sector. We're not talking about one company, one person. We're talking about a whole sector. I've never seen anything like that. All right. So if we continue on, we can see the White House now is trying to avoid this one word when it comes to SVP, which is the Silicon Valley Bank, which is a load of garbage. We all know that it was a bailout. Let's just call a spade a spade. We'll all be adults about this. Earlier today, we saw that the Swiss bank accounts got completely bailed out. Switzerland's radical pledge to bankroll Credit Suisse Group AG has won the embattled lender a chance to resurrect itself from almost complete collapse. We know that yesterday we were thinking that the Swiss bank was going to collapse for sure, and the Saudis did not want to lend any more money for regulatory problems. They didn't want to be in it more than 9.9%. Completely understandable. But the Credit Suisse bank has been a nightmare for years. Internal scandals, all kinds of stuff is happening to them. So we have to make sure, right, that we're not going to be part of that contagion. But it also comes up with this moral question: shouldn't terrible banks go out of business? Since when should they just be able to stay open even though they're terrible year after year? Been a serious thorn in the side of most European bankers. We can also see Wells Fargo is filing for $9.5 billion. $9.5 billion is what they need to dilute their shares to get extra money coming in to rescue them to stay open. My goodness, we're talking massive banks here, mega problems. But if you have less than 100,000, so this is the CDIC or the Canadian Deposit Insurance Corporation, if you have less than 100,000 in your accounts, you're going to be okay. You're all going to be insured. CDIC insures eligible deposits, right? Up to 100 grand. It could be in your savings or checking, the combination. RSP is retirement, or your RIF or TFSA, $100,000 in each of those accounts. If we go over to FDIC, which is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, it now will insure up to $250,000. So a lot more muscle than Canada has. Now, let's take a look at a couple of the things that I want to show you about what has been happening lately, because it is a doozy, you guys. So let's just share my screen then. I think you're going to learn some cool stuff from this. All right, what we're going to do then is this situation right here. We're talking about FDIC and CDIC, right? Is the insurance companies, those two companies. So if we take a look at those two companies, it's very important that you pay attention to that, because imagine this is me and you right here, this little dude right here, okay? We're now paying $5 a week to the bank for our plans, and part of it is FDIC insurance. So it really depends where you're putting your money. Please don't think that you are insured regardless of where you put your money. It is only in a bank that is insured. So you have to look at the individual bank to see if you are insured. This is not a given. The bank itself has to pay the insurance premium in order to have the insurance. That makes sense, right? You're not going to get a life insurance payment unless you paid for it. So this is how the banks actually look at it. So the bank is the one. This bank is going to be paying either FDIC or CDIC, either deposit insurance. This is the DI, deposit insurance. They're going to be paying that fee over to get the insurance, okay? So at the end of the day, I don't care if you want to say it's the bank that's paying it. No, it's not. The bank is not like a living, breathing thing. Only people are. Now, the people have to pay that $5 or whatever it is a week, a month to buy that insurance, okay? It's the people that pay for it. Now, there's a lot of calls that is going on right now where they want even greater. They want it not just 100,000 in Canada. They want 1 million. The US wants 1 million in every account. And so this is a big problem as well, because now the fees have to go up. So it may not go up as far, but we see these payouts are coming huge, and just the payouts that are coming that are huge, they're going to be doing more. So instead of that, now you have this other little guy down here that can be me, and now they're going to up it to $10 a week or something like that. They're going to be upping your fees so that they can now pay the deposit insurance even more. So at the end of the day, no matter how you slice this, you are paying more. And my big note, not all banks are insured. Please remember, not all banks are insured. I do not want you guys in big trouble with this, okay? Please make sure you're checking your banks. Now, let's take a look at the notes that we want to go over today. We got to look at a couple of things: price drops, a collateral, CDIC, and so forth. So let's check out the first one. So we had a house, let's say 12 months ago at the peak, and let's say it was worth $2 million. We're going to say it's a very fancy house, okay? Right now, in most areas, it's down around 25%. If it was down 25%, that home is now worth 1.5 million. And so you say, well, David, that's not really a problem. So is it not a problem? This is the new price. Before, they might have had a $1.8 million mortgage on this property. If they had a $1.8 million mortgage, how can they owe $1.8 million mortgage on a 1.5 home? It's not allowed to happen. And so what's been happening is banks are now allowing people to go longer and longer and longer amortizations just to keep it. But here comes the big problemo. The big problemo is the bank has the right to call you and say, yo, you're upside down $300,000 on your home, and we want that cash right now within 10 days, or we're going to foreclose on your home. Can that happen? Absolutely. Will it happen? That's another question. Do they have the right to do it? Absolutely they do. And as 12% of the mortgages come due every single year like they do, it's eventually going to hit the point where all these people are going to be flushed out of the system. All those people who stretch themselves far too thin, my friends. And that is the problem that we're facing right now. Now, imagine if we had millions of those. Now, when it comes down to this giant bank, let's change up the color. SVB Bank, that we all know absolutely collapsed, went down the toilet. Now, they got a bailout. As you know, all these governments do not want to hear that word bailout. It's a 4-letter word for them. They do not want to hear that. So this is what happened. The government, they want to give 25 billion. Notice I'm putting a B, billion dollars in cash to SVB. That would be a bailout, would it not? Yes, it would be a bailout. But in return, the government wants something from SVB, Silicon Valley Bank. They wanted 25 the other way, 25 billion in mortgages. That's what they wanted. Mortgages. Okay. So now they're going to get 25 billion for 25 billion. You would say that's an even trade. But guys, we just covered this with this house, for example. This house, they might only lend them 1.2 million for a mortgage on that home for 1.5. So now they're going to be upside down by $600,000, you guys. It's not worth the paper it's written on. So if we go down to here, though they handed over $25 billion in mortgages, it may only be backed up with $15 billion of homes. So of course it's a bailout. They're underwater, you guys. But the government's take on it is, don't worry, guys. We're just going to hang on to this property. We're going to hang on to it for 10 years if we have to, until it's worth 25 billion again. Well, the way that you're printing money, it's most likely going to be 25 billion worth not too long by the way you're printing money. So this is not a direct exchange. It's a bailout, however you want to cut it. And all these governments are just bailing out all of their wealthy friends. And there is no other way. We have to be grown-ups about this, guys. Okay, so that's what's happening right now with that. So one thing to know is, remember I said not all banks are insured. We have CIDC in Canada and FDIC in the United States. So Canada is $100,000 and FDIC is $250,000. Now, this is per account. I need you you to go do your research on this per account, per bank. So if you had $100,000 in one bank, 100,000 in another bank, 100,000 in another bank, and all the banks were insured, you're going to be covered. So it's for the people who have a lot of dough, me, that's in the banks, right? They're the guys that are going to be in trouble. So how did these banks get in trouble? So remember when we were looking at the graph, we saw that Bank of America was doing extremely well. So how do they do it? So imagine that we had people who had less than, I'm putting less than $100,000 in the bank, okay? Less than 100. And then over here, we have people with 1 million, I'm thinking of Dr. Evil, $1 billion in the bank, okay? These guys have a lot. So these guys are insured. These guys are not insured. So a healthy bank would have about 50% of regular plebs like me and you, okay, that we're just working our tails off, putting the money in the bank. The other 50% of their clients are people who are very wealthy and their deposits are not insured because it's so much. In this case, you have 50% of low risk, right? It's all insured, 50% with some higher risk. That would be a healthy bank, Bank of America. So if we want to now divide this and go to Silicon Valley Bank, these crazy people, if we looked at it, it was 90% of people had like $5 million more in their accounts and only 10% of us regular people with less than 100 grand. So you are telling me that Silicon Valley Bank is way over risk on this side. No wonder that they were in such deep doo-doo. Come on, we got to be adults about this. This is really, really serious. And so what is happening right now is we have something that is very important. We've been writing about for 300 years. And after 300 years, we still cannot seem to solve moral hazard. Moral hazard is a big problem. So imagine you have this bank in the center. The bank is the one causing all of the trouble for you. And what does the bank do? He wants to go take some risk. And if he wins, he's going to keep all the money. If he loses, guess what? He asks the taskman for a bailout. And then he gets a bailout, and guess what happens? Then he goes and takes even bigger risk, because he can't lose. If he wins, he keeps the money. If he loses this huge bet, what does he do? He gets a bailout again. And then what does that happen? Then it's even bigger risk again. You just keep on going around and around in a circle. And this is where it's called moral hazard, because you're not putting any of the blame on yourself. No matter how bad your bank is, no matter how bad your decision making is, you haven't hedged your book at all. You haven't paid attention to what's happening in the markets. You are a very poor money manager. Those people, unfortunately, got to lose their company. That's how it works. If you are terrible at your job, you don't continue doing it, right? And so terrible companies got to go. Even terrible banks, unfortunately, got to go. They shouldn't be allowed to do this. And this is people's lives, that they're dealing with, and their money in the banks. Their companies could fail. Now, the federal bank, what did they do? The Treasury, they got together. They did some real sleazy deals over the weekend. But I understand if you take down a bank like Silicon Valley Bank, it's not just the $200 billion. It's not just that. USDC coin, that crypto coin that's backed and pegged to the US dollar, they had $3 billion sitting in there. The entire ecosystem would have crashed. Airbnb, DoorDash, Roku, Dropbox, there's a whole bunch of companies. All their money is being put into this one thing. All those companies would have went under. Think about all these companies collapsing, all that money evaporating, all those jobs evaporating. I mean, like, the contagion is huge. So shouldn't we avoid this moral hazard and make sure that banks are not allowed to go all risk in? It's like going to the gambling table and putting all your money on red and rolling that roulette wheel and just hoping it's going to come. So we have to admit, we have to understand that there are serious, serious problems out there. So my question to you is, what can you do about it? So number one, we already covered the fact that I want you guys to go and try out some information. I want you to go find, if you can, if you're FDIC insured. If you are, I want you to be. Also, if you look at just the past week, all these banks are shutting down. Notice here, gold price in Canadian dollars in the last 7 days, up, 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 up. It's doing really good. I don't care if you want to use US dollars. It doesn't really matter which one. It's straight up. Doesn't matter if you're Canadian or whatever. Silver. Oh, this is in USD already. Look at this in the past 7 days. Well, whammo, it goes straight up. That's looking pretty healthy, right? So when the economy is bad, people are going to be fleeing to types of gold and silver. So you can get gold and silver for really, really cheap. Like gold, you can get not just a 1 ouncer, you can get very, very small 1 ounce grams. Silver on a coin, you could start with this with $30, $30, and you could get some silver. And I want you to do that. Now, on the flip side, let's take a look look at something else. It's Bitcoin. Bitcoin has gone way up. And why did Bitcoin go way up? So this isn't Canadian dollars, but the American chart's the exact same. Why did it go up? So I always tell you to have some Bitcoin and Ethereum in your own wallet. Remember, if you don't have the coins, it's not yours. You have to put it on a ledger. We have videos that we've done just on that ledger key that you have to have it on. But when there is mass contagion in the market and people are going to be losing their homes, losing their cash, losing their businesses, when that happens, there's a flight to safety to get your money out and get it into something solid. Please just go buy one of these, 1 ounce of silver. You can do that. 1 ounce, $30. Okay. Depends where you are. Please get something like that. That's insurance. Here's the cool thing about that 1 ounce of silver. 100 years ago, it bought 30 loaves of bread, and 50 years ago, it bought 30 loaves of bread, and today it buys 30 loaves of bread. So I'm saying it just maintains its purchasing power. It changes in dollar value, but it always will buy you 30 loaves of bread. That's what I want for you, just to be able to keep you a bit safe. The world is going to be shaken a lot by this, by all the over leveraging that has happened. I'm sad it's happening, honestly. The governments are going to continue to bail out, right? They're going to keep those money printers printing like crazy. So if you want, you have to learn how to outrun inflation. It's the only way. They're going to be printing a crap ton more money. I expect at least to see 10% inflation over the next 5 years, each year. So 50% in all. But remember, the government's never announced the entire inflation number. The government's usually only announce about half of it. And why do they only do that half? You have to ask them about that, really. But in reality, when we go look at the numbers, does anybody believe that homes have only gone up 5%, or the cost of rentals have only gone up 5%, and the cost of food has only gone up 5%, or gas? Everyone's like, I don't know, am I being gaslit here? Because you're going to the grocery store and you're seeing that the prices are up 20%, 30%. It's not 5%. And so they kind of fudge the numbers. And they do that. Like, one example is that they change the substitution for protein. Before, if it was a steak, now if you can buy hamburger, it equals the same amount of protein. And they go, okay, no inflation on that. One thing that drives me crazy is your cell phone. They say cell phone prices are going down. Huge, 20% down. But you know, and I know, when we go to buy our phones, the price is just going straight to the moon. But what they do, very clever, they say, well, it has more gigabytes of data. It has an extra camera on it, so it's extra value. So we think because you're getting this extra thing, we actually divide the amount of data that you have in the phone by the price, and we can now make it look like it's cheaper. Phone prices are not going down. It's all fudging the numbers. So the real numbers are usually about double what is being announced on the news. So you have to prepare for that. Please, I want you guys to be safe. Honestly, if this helps you guys at all, please consider subscribing to this. Please like it. Please send it to a friend. We appreciate all your support, and we'll talk to you soon.